Good evening and welcome to another weekly edition of Everything Bailey Paranormal. I am Ryan Roberts and these are my partners in the paranormal, Mr. Blake Smith and Miss Shelley Pruitt. How are you guys doing tonight?
Hey there.
Doing pretty good.
Heck yeah. I said, you
I'm
guys.
over it this week. It's only Tuesday. I don't even care anymore. Let's just do this.
So no accent tonight from Blake and Shelley's over it. I
No.
got it.
I'm
No,
over
no.
it. It's been one of those weeks and it's only Tuesday and I'm done.
Well,
So cheer me up, Brian.
Well, this month actually might be good for you, Shelley, because it is Ferocious Females Month. And I'm kicking it off this week.
Yes.
Yes, I mean, we do it every June because Mother's Day, Ferocious
May,
Females.
you mean?
I mean, every May, yeah. But every May.
Brian
It's
doesn't know what
Ferocious
month it
Females
is.
Month. Dude, I probably don't right now.
I'm feeling
But
pretty
every
ferocious
May-
today, so
But every May we do Ferocious Females Month in honor of Mother's Day and the ferocious women out there in the true crime world. And sometimes in the paranormal world too. But I'm kicking it off this year with Belle Starr, the legend of the Old West. You guys know much about her at all?
I kind of do actually, because
Mhm.
well, y'all know my weird obsession with powerful women. I don't care what side of history that they're on. So the fact that she's the Bandit Queen, y'all know I've read up a little bit on her.
Oh, hell yeah.
I just know Lauren Legend. So if you're going to give me some real backstory, I'm here for that. I'm ready to hear
Right.
some of that and learn some of the truth about her because we know about all
For
these
sure.
famous females that they have their lore, their legend
Mhm.
is more usually outlives what's the real
Right.
truth behind them.
Right, and that tends to happen a lot in the Old West, especially with everybody that you know of that's an outlaw. There is a famed version of their story, and there's the actual version. And tonight,
Well,
go ahead, Blake.
I was just gonna say, and tonight, I mean, this is a great way to kick it off because not only do we have a Bandit Queen for you this month, but we are going to finish Ferocious Females with 2 serial killers.
Ooh.
Yeah, you
Or
know we
were
love our
they?
women, or were they? That is the question. Anyways,
We'll have to find out.
I'm excited for this month. It's my
I say,
favorite month.
oh yeah, it's a lot of fun every year. We look forward to this month a lot, but we're going to go ahead and jump right into Belle Starr because there's a lot of lore and legend around her, and I think I'm going to clear up a lot of myths about Belle Starr. So let's go ahead and get started. So Belle Starr is as ferocious of a female as they come. Dubbed the Bandit Queen by numerous dime novel authors, she rode through the hearts and minds of many Wild West fans on the back of a lightning-fast horse, wielding double pistols and committing daring acts of crime while thumbing her nose at authority and subverting the societal norms of what it meant to be a woman. While some of that is true, Belle led a very complicated life and was often tangled in quarrels and feuds that were started by the men around her. However, she held her own and became a legend of the Wild West, entirely through her own merit and grit, and this is her story.
I feel like you could replace Belle Starr with Shelley Pruitt, and that would be fitting as well.
Thumbing my nose at the authorities. Catch me, copper. I do things my way, dude, all the time.
wielding double-fisted pistols while you're at it.
Oh yeah,
I know how to shoot.
All right, now Belle Starr was born Myra Bale Shirley to John R. Shirley and Eliza Shirley on February the 3rd, 1848 in Jasper County, Missouri. John came from a wealthy tobacco family in Virginia, and Eliza was a direct descendant of the Hatfields of the famous Hatfield and McCoy feud. So she's coming out of the limb swinging.
Yeah.
Oh, she got fighting in her blood.
Oh yeah. So she and John had met in Kentucky after John divorced his second wife, and the two fell in love shortly thereafter. After a few years of marriage, John was tired of his surroundings and saw fortune out west. So he moved his family out to the rolling hills of the Ozarks, to an 800-acre parcel of land near Spring River.
Damn, I didn't know it was that big. Shit.
Yeah, it was huge. So just outside of Georgia City, Missouri. Once on his land, John and Eliza got busy making their family. And Belle's brother John, a.k.a. Bud Shirley, came first in 1848. Then Belle came, and then her little brother Edwin in 1849. The three siblings were very close in age and very tight-knit. And John Shirley was a very happy man. See, he wanted the best for his children, and he knew farming wouldn't bring it to him. And the life he wanted, and he knew the life he wanted to give them was way beyond what they were doing as far as farming goes. So in 1856, he sold off his parcels of land and built a hotel and tavern right in the middle of downtown Carthage, Missouri. The hotel was very successful and extremely classy for the frontier, unlike any other out west. Eliza made sure that food and alcohol were the best that money could buy, and John curated and displayed an impressive library of books renowned throughout the region. The Shirleys were very wealthy and very learned individuals. And when it came to Belle, education was also very important. When she was around 10 years old, she was sent to the Carthage Female Academy, where she mastered reading, writing, arithmetic, and she also learned Greek, Hebrew, and Latin.
Oh,
And
damn. I did not know that.
No, she was very, very smart. And she became one hell of a piano player. She was exceptionally bright and came from good stock. She was charming, good-natured, and talented. But she also had another side, because by all accounts, she had one nasty temper. One of her teachers remarked that she, quote, had a fierce temper and would fight anyone, boy or girl. Sounds like Shelley. It was a trait that would come to define her and the rest of her life, along with several other traits and skills she learned outside of the classroom. Because in addition to her hot temper and educated mind, Belle really enjoyed riding horses and being in the great outdoors.
That does not sound like me.
No.
That's the one trait that separates you from Belle Starr.
I like outside.
You hate the outdoors.
I hate outside.
So naturally, throughout her teens, she began to pal around with her brother Bud, who was a daring rider and exceptional horseman. He was also very handy with a pistol and passed down everything he knew to his little sister. As a result, Belle became a crack shot and could hit almost any target. But little did she know, her new skill set would serve her very well in the coming years, because there was a war brewing, and the Shirley family would soon find themselves right smack dab in the middle of it.
Now, I will say, for those who are listening or watching, I think that living in the South, that there aren't people nicknamed Bud. That's a lie, because my older brother's nickname growing up was Bud. Fun fact. Anyways. It's true. It happens.
There's a lot of nicknames that have nothing to do with the regular names, too. So I don't know where they got
it.
Bud.
It doesn't, because my older brother, it's Michael, and, you got Bud. So, whatever.
Yeah, wherever the hell that came from.
Yeah.
But, well, in 1854, Congress passed the Kansas and Nebraska Act. It was the last of 3 acts that were compromises between pro-slavery expansionists and their opposition from the North. The two sides did not want the creation of any new pro-slavery states or any anti-slavery states, lest their side be at a political disadvantage. So, in order to make it fair during the expanse westward, the U.S. government created 2 new territories, one being Kansas and the other being Nebraska. And instead of making one a slave territory and the other a non-slave territory, they introduced the concept of popular sovereignty and said that these territories could hold votes of their own volition that would determine whether or not they would permit slavery, which sounded great on paper. But both sides began flooding the new territories with partisans, and they would often clash with each other. In several conflicts that became to be known as Bleeding Kansas, a mess of a situation that set the stage for the Civil War. It was kind of the prelude to the Civil War. This kind of leads directly into it. And in the middle of all this fighting, the Shirleys were quite vocal about their dislike for the abolitionists and the Northerners moving in, and what they considered, quote, nosy Yankees flooding the neighboring territories. And they openly condemned famous abolitionist John Brown for what they believed was unwanted trouble from Yankee carpetbaggers. Those are their words. But even as the tensions rose in Missouri, the rest of the nation, and the rest of the nation, the Shirleys were shocked when they read about the attack on Fort Sumter in April of 1861. No one thought the fight over slavery would come to this. Some worried about what was going to happen next, while others openly celebrated. And when several pro-slavery Southern states, say that 5 times fast, seceded from the Union and declared themselves a new nation, everyone knew that this meant war. Bud especially. He had talked for years about the Yankee scourge over in Kansas, making trouble for him and his family and other Southern sympathizers. He wished he could go out and show them just who they were messing with. and now he had an excuse to put his money where his mouth was. So Bud cleaned his guns, shined his boots, and had his horse reshoed. He gathered several close friends and Southern sympathizers from the surrounding area, and they swore an oath to make the Unionist lives a living hell. The men rode their horses through downtown Carthage and received a massive amount of praise and fanfare as they left town to go join the Confederate cause. And watching this entire scene with great admiration was Belle. Since she idolized her brother, she too believed in the Southern cause, and she believed it was a great and just one. So she vowed to fight the Unionists any way that she could and help her brother achieve his mission. Now, for the next few years, she did just that with great cunning and precision. See, Belle was coming into her own and becoming a young woman that turned heads in town, of which Belle was very aware, and she started using that to her advantage. As her brother and his men were roaming the countryside, Belle was flirting with Union enlisted men and officers, getting information on efforts to capture her brother and his friends, and helping him stay one step ahead of his enemies. In one instance, Belle was returning home from a scouting mission, and on her way back had to cut through the small village of Newtonia. When she arrived, she was surprised to see the town crawling with Union forces, and she knew her situation could get bad really fast. But she decided to throw caution to the wind and gather a bit more information on Union plans. But just as she found out a cavalry unit had been dispatched to capture her brother, Belle was about to make a mad dash for Carthage, where her brother had been visiting home. But before she could leave, she was stopped by several Union troops who really wanted her to meet their major. Belle obliged, not wanting to make a scene, but much to her chagrin, she was brought to a Major Eno, a man who knew exactly who Belle was and exactly where her sympathies lay. So he personally escorted her to his headquarters at a nearby manor and took her up to the music room and locked the door behind him. He had her captured and was not going to let her out of his sight for 1 second until he was good and damn ready to. But Belle had to get out of there. If she was stuck there, there was no telling what could happen to her brother. The thought of anything happening to him caused her anger and fear, and it caused tears to well up in her eyes. So she began to cry and stomped up and down and demanded that she be set free. But Major Eno just laughed at her. He held her there and taunted her, until after a while the Major thought his men had had enough time to make it to Carthage and capture Bud Shirley. So he opened the door and let Belle out. She wasted no time and flew out of there like a bat out of hell. As the Major watched her leave, she didn't take the path back to Carthage. She raced across the open country and into the forest on her lightning-fast horse, taking only the path that she knew. Major Eno was impressed and remarked, "If she makes it all the way to Carthage before my men, I am a damn fool." And his words could not be more prophetic, because by the time his men reached Carthage, Belle was waiting on them in front of her home, brushing her horse. As they approached, Belle smirked at them and curtsied and said, "If you're looking for Captain Shirley, he left about a half hour ago." Belle had again bested the Union and helped her brother Bud. But Bud's luck was about to run out. Dude, she beat their asses straight back to the damn house and told him to go.
How old is she at this point?
She's like 16 years old.
Damn.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Respect.
I mean,
if you're looking for Captain Shirley, he left about a half hour ago.
I mean, I obviously don't support her causes, but I respect her respects too, man. She
respect for that determination. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh, and she was bound and damn determined. Now, by 1864, the Union was through playing games with Bud Shirley, and the order came down to shoot him on sight. Every Union soldier in Missouri hoped to be the one to take out Bud. And in June 1864, a few got their chance. Bud and his fellow bushwhacker stopped in Sarcoxie, the name of the town, to grab a bite to eat at a Southern sympathizer's house named Miss Stewart. As the three dined and spoke of their support for the Southern cause, Bud glanced out the window and saw several Union soldiers heading directly towards Miss Stewart's house. So Bud and his friend took off across the yard, just hoping to make it to the fence and over to the other side so they could get away. Now, Bud's friend made it over to the other side, but when Bud went to jump, he was fatally wounded and fell dead where he stood. The Union had finally gotten their man. Now, Shirley's body was taken back to Miss Stewart's house, and his father was contacted to come and retrieve the body. And the next day, John Shirley and Belle came to claim the corpse. And Belle was absolutely devastated. Her brother was her best friend, and she couldn't believe that he was gone. All she could think about was what had happened to him. And the more she did, the angrier she got. Those damn Yankees would pay for what they did. As they pulled up to the Stewart house, her father went inside, and she stayed with the wagon. She couldn't bear going inside and seeing her brother's lifeless body. So she sat there, and a group of Union soldiers gathered in front of the home and watched as John laid his son in the back of the wagon. While John was tending to his son, Miss Stewart came outside with Bud's pistols and a holster and laid it beside Belle in the seat. Belle's blood began to boil as her eyes darted around the wagon, looking at the men most likely responsible for ending her brother's life. This was her chance to avenge Bud's death. So she reached down to the pistol and quickly unholstered it and aimed it at the Union men. Without hesitation, she pulled the trigger several times, hoping to make Swiss cheese out of any Union man in her sight. But all she got was the click, click, click of the hammer, striking empty chamber after empty chamber. She quickly realized that she had been had, and the men began to laugh at her. They had already removed all the bullets the day prior, and now she looked like a fool. So she just clutched the gun and sobbed in the wagon. Her family now humiliated, and her father an empty shell, the two made the trip back to Carthage and buried Bud rather quickly. John sold everything he owned and loaded up the family and moved them down to, and Shelley, you might know the name of this place. It's Syne, Texas. Is it Cyan or Skeen? What is it? Do you know?
Seyne?
Yes, Syene. I'm sorry. You ever heard of it? Like, I know it's outside of Dallas, but I don't even know how to pronounce that.
I don't know the proper pronunciation. For all I know, it could be Ellington. Who the
Cyan.
hell knows? We went through some of these Texas names.
I think it's Cian.
Is it Scene?
I think so.
Okay.
Don't
I'm not even
quote
going to
me.
guess.
See,
All
we're
right.
from Texas, and we don't even know how to pronounce Texas City. So good luck to the rest of you out there who are listening.
Yeah.
Well, they went down to Scene, Texas.
There you
And
go.
there the family integrated into the small, tight-knit community. And Belle reunited with an old flame named Jim Reed, who was a Confederate marauder that rode with Jesse James during the war as part of Quantrell's Raiders. By November of 1866, the two were married, and Jim tried his hand out at farming but became bored with it rather quickly. So he took a job in Dallas, but when the opportunity to return home back to Missouri came, Jim went and Belle excitedly went with him. Jim wanted to start a family, so he and Belle got to work. And in September of 1868, Belle gave birth to their daughter, Rosie Lee. And Belle loved her daughter so much that she nicknamed her Pearl, because she was the most precious gem in Belle's life. Belle was finally happy and seemed ready to settle down. She had a little girl she loved with every fiber of her being, and a man she loved with all of her heart. She was a far cry from the woman she was during the war years. And while she seemed ready to embrace the slower-paced life, her husband was in the complete opposite boat. Jim had grown restless and began staying away from home for long periods of time. Being in one spot and raising a family wasn't his idea of a good time. He craved the life of excitement he had during the war. His days of being a Southern bushwhacker were long gone, but the excitement of the saloons and the gangs in Fort Smith, Arkansas seemed to quell that restlessness that haunted him. So he was spending all of his time drinking and gambling. And eventually, he fell in with a gang that murdered the brother of a rival gang. The surviving brother began to hunt down and murder Jim's partners. And when Jim was the last one on the list, he quietly slunk back home with his tail between his legs and told Belle where he had been. And that they needed to leave ASAP, because an avenging outlaw was hunting him down, and he feared his pursuer was intent on killing him and the whole family. So they had to get as far away as possible. And he packed up the family as fast as he could and moved them out to Los Nitos, California. Once there, they settled in the small farming community, and the family started anew. Jim again picked up the plow and began farming. And soon, on February the 22nd, 1871, Belle gave birth to a son named James Edwin Reed, or Eddie for short. After the birth of his son, Jim tried to stay around the home in an attempt to do right by his family. But once again, Jim became bored with farming and had to pay debts. So he began to pick up odd jobs in nearby Los Angeles, working in gambling halls and bartending at saloons. This time, Belle had given her blessing and stayed home to work the farm, hoping it would become profitable and Jim could come home. But just as they were getting their footing, Jim got himself in more trouble. He was accused of passing off counterfeit bills at gambling halls. And since this was a federal offense, federal agents came to investigate. But luckily, they could find no evidence of Jim counterfeiting. However, they did find that Jim had a warrant for himself for murder in Arkansas. So once again, Jim ran home and told Belle she had to pack up and leave. And not only did they have to leave, but they had to leave fast, because the law was right on his tail. So Jim went ahead and told his wife he would meet her in Missouri. And Belle and the children quickly hopped the stagecoach and headed back east, leaving California and the law in the dust. But on the way back home, Belle had a change of heart. She was tired of running across the country, just because Jim couldn't stay out of trouble. So she moved back to Texas to be with her family, and left Jim to figure out his stuff on his own.
Good for her.
Oh,
Jim sounds like he's a pain in the ass.
Jim is a real pain in the ass, and he's going to continue to be a pain in the ass.
Oh,
And
fantastic.
By the way, the correct pronunciation of the town is Syene. So
Okay.
Thank you. You know, that makes sense, but half the time when it looks like it's spelled, that's not how you pronounce it.
I know.
Yeah, ALVORD is not Alvord, it's Alvoy. So yeah, go figure.
Welcome. I mean, there's videos all over the internet of how to pronounce Texas cities. You know, I mean, my favorite one is when they try to say Nacogdoches.
Oh God, yeah.
It's Natchitoches. Yeah.
Well, no, I'm talking not Nacogdoches, Louisiana, but Nacogdoches, like in East Texas.
Oh,
where they're always like Nacogdoches, and I'm like, not even close, my friend.
One time I was on the phone with my mom. I was going through Mahia, and she said, "Oh, are you in Mexia?" I said,
"You're in Mexia." No, honey, we're in Mahia.
Oh, Lord.
But after being in Texas, Belle began to miss her husband, and her mother, and had her mother convince her father to deed her a plot of land and to bring Jim to Texas for a fresh start. It worked, and Jim rejoined his wife and children, and once again began farming the land, because that worked out so well the last time. Which went really well at first, but like he was often known to do, Jim went back to his old ways and fell in with several gangs, staying away from home and only returning to Belle every so often, leaving her and her parents to raise the children.
See,
Jim,
ladies,
just
sometimes
stay gone, Jim. Adios.
Sometimes, ladies, if you just stay single, you can have it all. Jim sounds like a turd.
Yeah, oh, you just wait. Jim's a big old turd. So
stop falling in love with him. Stop falling in love with him.
But I can fix him.
He's not changed, man.
So, in the coming months, Jim picked up several more warrants in Texas, Arkansas, and Indian Territory. Indian Territory is what they called Oklahoma back then.
Yeah.
So he needed a place to hide out for a bit, and only trusted one man to do it, and his name was Tom Starr. Now, Tom was a Cherokee chief who was sympathetic to the Southern cause, and had forged a friendship with Jim Reed during the war. So as soon as all of this heat was on him, Jim fled to Indian Territory to hide out with Starr. But while hiding out, he began to miss his wife. So he sent word for Belle to come and visit. What she did after leaving her children at her parents' house.
I'm coming, honey. What do you need?
What you want?
God
She would
almighty.
stay for a bit and visit, and then return to her children. After a while, Jim would send for her again, and the cycle would repeat. He only wants her when he wants her, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But
When she's convenient.
Mm-hmm. But one day, Belle received a letter from Jim. saying that there was a rumor going around that lawmen were mapping the route she used to come and see him. So he needed her to go up to the Starr's property and stay there permanently. Belle, being the ever-dutiful wife, did as she was asked. But when she got there was no Jim. So she waited for weeks and still no sign of him. Belle feared the absolute worst. She just knew that some second-rate lawman had gotten his hands on her beloved. But news would soon arrive that shattered that assumption and broke her heart. Jim had not been captured at all. He was holed up in San Antonio with an 18-year-old Mexican girl named Rosa, who he had promised to marry. Belle was floored and absolutely livid. How could this bastard do this to her? After so many years of loyalty and doing what he asked, he had ruined her reputation and her life. She was completely done with him and his bullshit. So she saddled up her horse and rode back to her family. And Jim never saw his wife again.
So wait. So he sends her up to Oklahoma while he comes back to Texas.
All the way to San Antonio. She's up in like Oklahoma, like she's up in like mid Oklahoma.
Right. He sends her up there to live permanently because he's in trouble, but then he goes back to Texas where she already was.
All the way down to San Antonio. And that's a long way back then. That's a long way today, but even a longer way on horseback back then. So, but he never saw her again. But she would see him one more time. Because in August of 1874, Jim would lose his life after a stagecoach robbery and a lawman killing him trying to claim the reward on his head. The lawman took Jim's body into Paris, Texas, and sent for Belle to come identify his remains. Belle received the news of her husband's death and had a mixture of emotions. On one hand, she still loved him, and news of his death pained her. But on the other hand, he had been a bad father and a terrible husband. Plus, he had made her look like a fool, openly shacking up with another woman. So Belle halfway thought he got what he deserved. But nonetheless, she saddled up her horse and rode into Paris. She arrived in town and went to view the corpse of her now dead husband. But when it came time to identify him, she said, "I've never seen that man before in my life."
Good for her. God damn it. Good for her.
I know, man. She's like,
I do like her.
Yeah,
I'd be like, I don't know who that sumbitch is.
I knew you'd love her.
Sweet Melissa said, "Those damn side pieces."
Exactly. So she said, "I've never seen that man before in my life," and turned to the lawman that killed her husband, squinted her eyes, stared him down, and said, "You will never get that reward money." She calmed herself down and collected herself and walked out the door and hopped on her horse, having given the undeserving Jim one last bit of loyalty. You know, I mean, so on one hand, she's like, fuck this guy. On the other hand, she's like, well, I still kind of love him. So
I do kind of like the idea that she stopped this guy from profiting off him. I do like that.
Me too, but I think it was more so out of like duty to her husband than, you know, I think if she had her druthers, she wouldn't really gave a crap, but
yeah,
I don't know.
No, she loved him, child. She loved him. Don't you judge her.
So she returned home to pick up the pieces and plan her next steps. Now being a widow with 2 children, Belle hit a rough patch over the next couple of years. She had no man to rely on, and so she had to fend for herself. And in an effort to have extra money coming in, she left her son with her parents and moved her daughter over to Dallas, where she pushed Pearl into the theater world, which worked out quite well for a bit. But the stress of the theater became too much for Pearl, and during one of her performances, she fainted on stage. And she was rushed to the doctor's office, and the doctor told Belle to keep her daughter off the stage. So Belle pulled her daughter back into obscurity, and her income stream was severely diminished. Also, to make matters worse, Belle's dad passed away, and her mother had to sell the family farm and move back to Missouri. She also couldn't take care of Belle's son anymore, so they had to send him to live with in-laws. In addition to all of this bad luck, Belle also had to sell her farm and live off the proceeds. She knew she couldn't take care of Pearl much longer, so she had to travel up to Conway, Arkansas, and leave her daughter with family friends. Belle was in a pit of despair. things just seemed to be falling apart around her. One minute, she had it all together, and the next she had nothing. Things were looking bleak. Until 1879, when Belle took a trip to Galena, Kansas. There, she met a man named Bruce Younger. Now, Bruce was bold and exciting and showed her a lot of attention. He was also a big-time gambler. So, when he hit big jackpots, he would shower her in gifts and treat her to nights on the town. And Belle's fortune had seemed to turn. And her romance with Bruce was so hot and heavy that she moved into Bruce's hotel room.
Not the hotel room.
Not the hotel room.
Fancy hotel. Mm-hmm. Seems like she has a damn type.
That's exactly what I thought. She has a type. She has...
Yeah, fucking scoundrel.
A scoundrel, a cad. Yeah.
I mean, I'm sorry, but could you imagine just like, I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Would you share my hotel room?
No. I've seen it happen before, though.
That sounds like a great pickup line. I'm going to use it the next time I'm out at the bar.
I'm down there at the Motel 6. They keep the light on for me.
Oh, my God.
But eventually, Galena, Kansas lost its luster, believe it or not. So Belle decided to go back to Indian Territory and back to the Starr's property. And she decided to bring Bruce with her. She expected Bruce to do the right thing and marry her. But just as things seemed to be going that way, Bruce skipped town and headed back towards Kansas. Belle found out and was absolutely livid. She had been made a fool of again. That son of a bitch had used her and tossed her to the side. Just as soon as he saw his opportunity, he took off. And if she had anything to say about it, he was going to pay. So, with her blood boiling, she saddled up her horse and sped towards Kansas, where Bruce was hiding out. Belle went directly to the courthouse and got a marriage license. She also grabbed a justice of the peace and a minister and walked right up to Bruce. Bruce looked like he had seen a ghost. But before he could say anything, Belle pulled out her pistol and aimed it right at Bruce's forehead. She cocked back the hammer and told him that he would marry her, or else she would splatter his brains all over the ground in front of God and everybody.
God damn! Talk about a shotgun, giving new meaning to a shotgun wedding.
Yeah, she wasn't playing around. She expected something, and damn it, she was going to get it.
Well, he'd been toying with her affections.
Mm-hmm.
Well, she's pissed because she's already gone through this with 2-Bit Jim over here, who's now dead and deceased.
Right.
So she's like, "Oh hell no, I'm not doing this again. Screw this shit."
No, you're not doing this to me.
But why would she want to marry somebody who sounds like pretty much just like her dead husband?
Well, I mean,
she got a type. Never mind. She's got a type.
She's got a type, and I think with this one, she seems to be making a point more so than actually wanting to marry this person.
Oh man, the comments are eating that up. They're just like, I hear the Dixie Chicks song "Earl" playing in the background.
I love her tenacity, though. She's like, listen, we're going to do things my way now.
Mm-hmm. Saying that's a contract under duress. If I've ever heard of one, it is.
So did he say yes? Did he say I do?
Well, Bruce was shaking like a leaf on a tree, but he agreed. I mean, who wouldn't at that point? And the two were married in front of several townspeople. As soon as the ceremony was over, Belle got on her horse and rode back to Indian Territory alone, leaving behind a bewildered Bruce. Belle had no intention of staying with him. She just wanted to prove a point. Men got everything in this world and left her with scraps. From here on out, she was going to take what she wanted.
You know what? I give her respect for that, then.
I give respect
she
for
said,
that,
damn it, I want it. And you know what, though? I almost guarantee you there was something that went through her brain of like, this is the same kind of guy. I've been through this. The other one died, and she might be one, looking out for herself in case something happens to him, too. You never know.
Oh, yeah. She's an independent woman who don't need no man.
All right. I give her some respect for that.
Right.
I mean, but that's some big balls.
Yeah, I do. She don't play around. I mean, when that temper hits, I mean, it's over and done with at that point. It's not. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. So
that I can identify with.
Yeah,
that temper when that temper blows. Yeah, we're done playing.
That's it. So with nowhere else to go and nowhere else to turn, Belle rode her horse straight to Tom Starr's property. She stayed around the property and spent her days riding and enjoying its beauty. And in the process, she fell for Tom's son, Sam. About 3 weeks after her gunpoint wedding, she married Sam on June the 5th, 1880, in accordance to Cherokee law. And finally, at the age of 32, Belle hoped for a little bit of peace and quiet. So she and Sam built a cabin in a remote stretch of land near the Canadian River called Younger's Bend, putting down roots for a quiet life together. Not long after the cabin was built, Belle even went to retrieve Pearl and brought her there to live with her and Sam. Belle now had everything she ever wanted. Sam treated her well and worked dutifully to feed her and Pearl. He was gentle, kind, and treated Pearl like one of his own. Belle couldn't ask for anything more, and for a minute, life seemed blissful.
Oh God, was he a fucking gambler too? Jesus Christ!
No, he wasn't.
I'm expecting Bruce to show back up, going, "Hey, what you do with my wife?" And Sam going, "What do you mean? This is my wife."
No, but Sam couldn't seem to stay out of trouble either, and we'll kind of get to that later.
She's got a type. Okay.
She's got a type. Yep.
But then word got out amongst the outlaw community that Sam Starr and his wife had a remote cabin in Younger's Bend. It was the perfect spot for outlaws to hide out while running from the law. And the first one to come calling was Jesse James. Jesse knew Belle from Missouri and from the war. So Belle was incredibly excited to see her old friend and welcomed him with open arms. Jesse stayed with the Starrs for 2 weeks until he was sure the law was no longer tailing him. And he left and went about his business. Now, Belle was quite pleased with the visit, but somehow rumors got out about Jesse James visiting Belle in her cabin. And people began to speak ill of her and the company that she kept. No matter what, Belle just couldn't seem to escape the rumors and accusations. Even in her secluded little piece of heaven, she was still a pariah. So she decided that if she had that reputation of a scoundrel, she might as well embrace it and be one. And in April of 1882, Belle and her husband stepped into the role that people had unfairly cast them in.
Which husband?
This is Sam.
Sam. Okay. Yeah, Belle and Sam step into it.
I believe that's this picture. I believe.
No, that is actually, so that guy, his name is Blue Duck. And
okay, just kidding.
Yeah, so his name is Blue Duck, and that guy was like some guy that a lawyer had her take a picture with to try to gain sympathy for him.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, but that's what Belle would have looked like.
Yeah.
So, but the couple, they visited a couple of horse boarding brothers named Frank and Jim West. Now, Belle wanted to board a few of her horses and noticed a really nice horse running around their property. So she asked the brothers if she could borrow it for a few days. And they told her no because it wasn't their horse to lend out. But Belle really wanted that horse. So her and Sam took it anyway, along with a mare that belonged to another rancher. Eventually, the West brothers figured out what had happened and told the rancher that the Starrs had taken their horses. So the ranchers went to retrieve them. But Belle refused to give them back. The ranchers were absolutely dumbfounded, so they warned Belle that if she didn't give them their animals back willingly, they would have to seek legal action immediately.
And wasn't that a hanging offense?
Horse thievery.
Horse thievery, yep.
Belle told them that they could do what they wanted, but if they did, they better hope to God they didn't run into her husband on the trail. The ranchers didn't take that threat too well, so they immediately rode to Fort Smith, Arkansas, and got a warrant for the Starrs' arrest. The law in Fort Smith wasted no time dispatching Marshal L.W. Marks and his posse into Indian Territory to arrest the horse thieves and bring them to justice swiftly. It took them a little while, but eventually they caught up to the couple as they were camping by a creek in the Osage Nation in Indian Territory. So the marshals hid in the woods by the trail and waited for Sam to come that way and give his horse a drink. Later that day, Sam did just that, and the marshals sprang on him in a heartbeat and tied him to a tree. Naturally, Belle got curious about where her husband went and came looking for him. So she walked down the trail and saw him tied to the tree. But before she could react, the marshals jumped on her and subdued her. But Belle kicked and punched and clawed and fought like hell. But they eventually were too much for her, and she surrendered. The marshals had captured the Starrs, but they still had other warrants to carry out before they could return home. And since Belle was the only female prisoner they had, they couldn't in good faith put her in the prisoner wagon.
Mm-hmm.
So instead, they opted to put her in the back of the supply wagon, which sounded like a great idea at the time.
Oh, God.
But little did the marshals know, as they rode across the rugged terrain, Belle had come up with a plan to annoy her captors. As the horse hooves and wagon wheels made racket and clattered, she began to throw supplies and cookware out of the back of the wagon, so when the posse and the prisoners stopped to eat, they began to notice their items missing, and it didn't take them long to connect the dots.
No,
totally
she
right.
didn't. No,
I
she
totally
didn't.
be picking shit out the back of that wagon.
All right, that's pretty ingenious. Yeah,
It is.
yeah. That's why I
Like-
pointed to you, Shelley. I was like, this got you all over it.
Yeah, it kind of does.
You're like, you're gonna put me back here. Here goes your pot. There goes a pan.
Uh-huh.
There goes your.
There goes your
fork.
beans.
Like, cool, you got me. I'm going to make your life a living hell, though.
You want to take me? There are consequences.
I'm just gonna pester the shit out of you.
Right.
I ain't going to make it easy one bit.
She sounds
Good
like
for
a
her.
Hellcat.
Now,
I
yeah.
love it. Good for her.
Yeah, she was like, you know what?
Yeah,
I'll fix
catching
y'all.
her would be like trying to, give a cat a bath. She's like, no, not gonna go.
I mean,
Claws out.
we can't say too much good for her because she did steal some horses and kind of
She
deserved
did.
it. But
She
It's
borrowed
amusing.
them.
did she borrow them?
Yeah,
Okay.
she
Yeah,
borrowed
she-
them.
Without asking.
Oh,
So-
potato, right?
Hey, wait. Hold on. Question for you because it
Yeah.
was just said in the comments. She was a middle child, right?
Yes, she was the middle child. Mm-hmm.
Explains everything. Go ahead. That's
But the
me.
middle child-
I'm a
And
fucking
she was the
middle
middle
Middle children
child.
were usually the peacemakers.
Well, she was the middle child, and she was the only girl in the family. So,
Oh,
No, we're all-
that
we're-
explains it. The
Well,
only
yeah,
girl.
that too. Well, we're always the ones that are always overlooked, so we have to make a lot of clatter and noise and everything like that just to annoy people, just to get attention. So makes sense.
And between two brothers, oh yeah, she had to be tough. Yeah.
Yeah.
oh yeah, absolutely. So, now,
See, wait, hold on before you go on.
Yeah,
See,
yeah.
that's all you have to do is see if he just wants to take you home and you say no one time and he keeps being persistent, just start throwing bar glasses across the bar. He'll leave you alone. It's okay. Just take every beer that he gets and throw it across the bar. He'll leave you alone. I guarantee you.
I don't condone violence. Don't do that.
Make the biggest scene you possibly can.
Psychological
Exactly.
warfare works so
Mhm.
much better.
Oh, and this is
Depends on the-
absolutely psychological warfare here.
Depends on the situation if I condone violence or not.
True.
Fair
I'm
enough.
just saying. I'm just saying.
So these guys began to notice that their items were missing, and it didn't take them long to connect the dots. But because Belle was a woman, the marshals remained patient. But one day, Belle went too far and really pissed them off. So the wagon train stopped one afternoon for lunch, and while Belle was eating, she noticed her guard had his back to her. He was too deep into his food and wasn't paying attention. So she leapt forward and pulled his gun out of his holster. The guard quickly realized what happened and began to run with Belle in hot pursuit, firing the pistol she had stolen.
Shit.
Now, the marshal heard the commotion and ran over to confront her, and they all drew their pistols on Belle and made her drop hers. The men had had enough of her crap, so they decided to chain her up for the rest of the trip. A decision she didn't take too lightly, but nonetheless, she was shackled until they got back to Fort Smith.
I can see her with the pistol going, it's okay, it's empty anyway.
Here's the thing,
Chase
too.
that dude all over
You-
there.
Well, you were talking about psychological warfare. That's all this was, because if she wanted to hit him because she was such a good shot, she could have.
She could have. Yep.
But she was just doing what she
She-
could to mess with these marshals all the way to Fort Smith.
She just wanted to see that old boy dance.
And that is given straight up Shelley Pruitt energy.
Oh, absolutely.
Just straight up.
Be like, here, it's already empty. Dink.
Whoops.
All
Now,
done.
on March the 8th, 1883, she and Sam were brought before hanging Judge Isaac Parker. Now,
Uh-oh.
normally, Judge Parker would hang a horse thief at the drop of a hat. But on this day, he must have been feeling quite generous. Because instead of having the couple hang, he sentenced them both to a year at the House of Correction in Detroit. The couple had no idea how lucky they were to be put in prison and not hung on the gallows, because I have been to Fort Smith and I've seen those gallows, and many a men hung for less than what the Stars did.
Well, and I'm
Mhm.
trying to
So wait,
figure
that
out,
seems
like,
that seems like an odd I'm sorry, that seems like an odd difference. We're either going to hang you or you get a year in jail. That seems really, you know,
I wonder if he just took pity on Starr, on Belle, because she was, I mean, like, how they treated women back then. So I wonder if maybe he just took pity on her and was like, well, screw it, I'll send them to prison. Maybe they'll reform themselves, because this is like their first offense, I believe.
it was the first time they got caught.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and also the thing is, like, if people don't understand, like, back in the day, that we're in the late 1800s, horse thievery, I mean, you would have to equate it almost as like Grand Theft Auto, if you will. Horses were very vital to daily life and transportation. So if you take that from somebody, you are literally taking their livelihood from them in whatever they're doing, because they have to be able to transport goods or farm or whatever. So if people are wondering why is it a hangable offense, that's the reason why, is because it's, I mean, it's like a high-end offense for this time. Yeah.
Like, I mean, you might as well, like, shooting someone in the back and horse thievery are the two worst things you can do at this point in time.
Yeah.
So, but on March the 8th, 1883, the couple were taken to the facility up in Detroit. And Belle, believe it or not, did extremely well in prison. She became a model prisoner and impressed the warden so much that he gave her light duties around the prison, and even had her tutor his children in French and music, which earned she and Sam an early release 9 months after they went in. Now, once Belle and Sam left prison, they went back to Younger's Bend as fast as they could. Belle just wanted to go back to her homestead and be with her family. She wanted nothing to do with crime and wanted to live a good, quiet life. So for the next year, she became a paragon of virtue. She brought Pearl back to live at the cabin, and even took in an orphan girl named Mabel that Pearl had gotten really close to. She also got her son Eddie to come live with her and Sam out there in Younger's Bend. And she began to take care of sick neighbors when they needed help, including the West brothers' wives. When they got sick, she even took care of them. And they're the ones that put her ass in jail. These things were really looking up for her. That year of tranquility and doing good deeds gave her hope and made her believe her criminal days were behind her. But that hope and belief would soon fall by the wayside and give way to old habits when a knock came to the front door of the cabin shortly before Christmas of 1884. The knock came from a man named John Middleton.
A man. It's always a man. Drives you women crazy. It's always a fucking man. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, they'll make you cuss. That's for
sure. She was doing so good, and then this asshole jumps in.
Here comes a dude.
Here comes a man.
Now, John was a notorious horse thief and cousin to her long-dead ex-husband, Jim Reed. So he's still haunting her. And when she saw him, she knew exactly who he was. He told Belle that he had escaped from a prison down in Texas and had just shot the newly elected sheriff of Lamar County.
God damn.
Oh, gosh.
He had been on the run and had been chased by Texas lawmen all the way up to Younger's Bend.
She should say to him, I don't know who you are, just like she did.
I've never seen you in my life.
And to give you a geographical location, Lamar County is in Northeast Texas. Just FYI. So he shot a sheriff and the newly elected sheriff in
ran to Oklahoma.
Yeah, ran to Oklahoma.
And to make matters worse, the Texas lawmen were working with John West, who was now a policeman, to track him down and bring him to justice. Belle listened to him intently, but didn't want anything to do with John Middleton. She had put her criminal ways behind her, but she did hate John West with a burning passion for helping send her to prison 2 years earlier. So she and Sam agreed to help John Middleton hide out and keep him out of the law's hands. Middleton hid out at Younger's Bend from Christmas until April, because one day that spring, John West and the lawmen burst into Belle's cabin, hoping to catch Middleton by surprise. But all they found was a very pissed-off Belle, with a six-shooter hanging off of her hip and her hand on the handle. She was none too pleased with the intrusion, and cussed John West for all he was worth. She told the lawmen she was tired of their harassment, and then questioned their manhood for their inability to snag a lone fugitive. So John West and the posse left the house with their tail between their legs and returned to town. But Belle and Sam knew they would be back, so they had to get Middleton away from Younger's Bend and fast. They came up with a plan where they would hide Middleton in the back of their covered wagon and get him as close as they could to Arkansas. From there, he would borrow Pearl's horse and Belle's pistol, and when he got into Arkansas, he would leave both at a predetermined location where Sam and Belle would pick them up. So they packed up and headed out to get Middleton to freedom. They booked it across Indian Territory, and everything went smoothly until the very last leg of the journey, when for some reason Pearl and Middleton got into an intense argument. That was so bad that Pearl refused to lend him her horse. Here they were in the middle of nowhere, camped out on the trail with a wanted outlaw. They couldn't just sit there like this. So Belle began looking for alternatives to get him on his way.
That sounds like a Shelley move as well. Mm-hmm. I'll let you borrow my horse. Nah, you pissed me off. You ain't taking this bitch anymore.
You should have acted better. My offer is rescinded, asshole. Figure it out now. Adios. Shoo.
She was her mother's daughter.
Yeah, right?
I was just thinking that Pearl sounds a lot like her mama.
Oh, yeah. So a short while later, Belle came upon this rancher named Fayette Barnett. Now, Barnett was roaming the countryside looking for his stray cows, and when Belle spotted him, she said she was in need of a horse. And Barnett said he could get her one and told Belle to wait. She waited patiently on him to return, and when he did, he had the most sorry horse she had ever seen. It was a beat-down old mare that had no horseshoes and was blind in one eye.
He didn't think he was going to get it back. That's the one I brought too.
Oh, wait a minute! It wasn't his horse. So,
oh God!
Unbeknownst to Belle, it was stolen. But they were all out of options, so she took the horse back to Middleton, and Middleton was absolutely livid. But now he had a ride into Arkansas. So Belle gave him Pearl's expensive saddle and a Colt pistol, to guide himself along the way. And Middleton took off on the busted horse towards the border state.
I just have this horrible image of him on this busted ass horse.
I feel sorry for the horse.
I know. It's like blind in one eye. It's probably slightly limping and overweight, and its bones are brittle.
No shoes on the horse.
No shoes.
Yeah, to go over all that
tongue
terrain.
Hanging out.
That image just flashed in my head.
Probably has something that's prolapsed somewhere on it.
Probably.
I just spit everywhere.
Oh, damn. That horse's butthole's falling out.
Oh, the joke was fine like it was, Ryan.
Yeah,
I need a little more pepper.
Didn't really need to go that far, my friend.
Yeah, you did.
Nope.
But apparently the horse, he didn't make it too far, because a few days later...
Probably not.
No. A few days later, a man spotted the mare covered in mud and tangled in a thicket, still strapped with Pearl's saddle and Belle's pistol. And Middleton's bloated corpse wasn't too far away, so he was like laying kind of close to where the horse was, and the horse was just like kind of wrapped up. And
maybe the horse kicked him.
could have been. But with incriminating evidence, he's got Pearl's saddle and he's got Belle's gun hanging off the side of him. So it didn't take a genius to see that the Starrs and the Middletons were in cahoots together, and John West was summoned to come take a look at it. And he came out to the scene and figured out what was going on rather quickly. So he searched the area for Belle to question her about just why the man he had been hunting for half a year had items that belonged to her and her daughter on his person. And it didn't take John West long to find his target. He and his men caught up with Belle and Pearl camping near Darndale, Arkansas, and immediately started to go through their wagon looking for more evidence to link Belle to Middleton. Belle, of course, protested and raised hell with West. And when he found a locked trunk in the back of the wagon and attempted to forcibly open it, he heard the click of a revolver and looked up to see Belle aiming 2 pistols directly at his face.
Oh, shit. Not 1, but 2.
Mm-hmm.
Damn.
And she calmly informed him that if he broke open her trunk, she would personally send his soul speeding to the gates of hell. So West dropped the trunk and he and his men left. But they weren't done with her by a long shot. Belle had won a small victory, but knew the fight was far from over. Belle returned to Younger's Bend immediately, and the rest of the year was not good, and the beginning of 1886 was no better. Sam was accused of several robberies, and warrants were issued for his arrest. And in January, Belle learned of a warrant for her arrest, for the theft of the mare that John Middleton got from Barnett. Belle hadn't realized that it was stolen when she received it. So she rode into Fort Smith to proclaim her innocence and turn herself in on January the 21st. She knew that her reputation made her look guilty, so she wanted to get out ahead of it, and pleaded not guilty and posted her bond. Hanging Judge Parker set her trial for September, and Belle promised to return for the trial. With that, she hopped on her horse and headed back towards home. But on the way, she made a stop at Barnett's property and paid him a little visit. She told Barnett that she was innocent and he knew it. He had willingly given her a stolen horse and he was going to make it right. Barnett agreed, and before Belle was done with him, he even agreed to pay Belle's legal fees. Belle had made her point and got what she wanted.
I wonder how many times she had to put a pistol in his face for
that. Absolutely.
Like, damn.
So you gonna pay? Oh, okay, fine. I'll pay them legal fees. Just get out here.
How old is she at this point?
She's in her mid-30s, like 34, 35.
Well, you said she was 32 when the James brothers came
married,
to her house. Yeah.
Right.
When she had her third marriage to Sam. Yeah.
Yeah, she was about 32.
Okay, so that was in the early 80s, I think you said.
Yes,
the 1880s. So you're in the mid to later 1880s. So yeah, she's probably about mid-30s, mid to late 30s at this point.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah, so she's because she doesn't. Yeah, she's about mid-late 30s. So she hitched up her horse after she got what she wanted from Barnett, and she went on home. But when she got back, there was more bad news. Sam had linked up with a few other bandits and knocked over a store in nearby Blaine. Someone recognized him and told the police, so now he had another warrant. And to make matters worse, he was involved in yet another robbery. On February the 27th, 1886, when he and a group of men claimed to be U.S. Marshals and robbed a local man. A warrant was also issued for that robbery as well.
Jesus.
So he's got 3 on his head. He just can't seem to stay out of trouble.
Yeah.
Groups of lawmen began to roam the area looking to collect Sam and turn him in for the bounty money. And it was like Belle couldn't get a moment's peace. Her husband wasn't helping her reputation or desire to lay low. But he was her husband, and she was going to stick by him no matter what. And she did, as posse after posse began snooping around looking for him. All of them, of course, led by their old friend, John West. He was absolutely relentless, and each time he attempted to get Sam, he came away empty-handed. So finally, one day, West tried the diplomatic approach and asked Belle to please give her husband up voluntarily. But for his trouble, he was thoroughly cussed out. West knew they were getting nowhere, and violence seemed to be the only way this was going to get solved. It was as if the stars and the West were locked in an eternal struggle. In September, Belle set off for Fort Smith to stand trial for the stolen mare. But while she was there, she got some bad news. Sam had been out riding Belle's favorite horse, Venus, when a posse of men led by John West's brother, Frank, surprised him and tried to catch him. But Sam took off for a cornfield where he hoped to lose his pursuers. Frank West wasn't taking any chances. He knew if Sam got in that field, he would never get his hands on him. So to keep that from happening, he aimed his revolver at Sam's back and fired 3 times.
Oh, shit.
Hitting Sam once in the back, and hitting Sam once in the back of the head, once in the side, and the third hit Venus and dropped her like a bad habit, which threw Sam out of the saddle and into the dirt. Frank and his men immediately rode up to where Sam fell, and saw where he was bleeding from the back of his head and he wasn't moving. Frank had already screwed up and was freaking out. He had never identified himself as a lawman, and never gave Sam a chance to surrender. Plus, he shot him with his back turned. He had done everything a lawman should never do. And if Sam actually did die, Frank would be in a world of hurt.
Mm-hmm.
So Frank left to get 2 of his men to guard Sam and went to go get a doctor. But while he was gone, Sam somehow regained consciousness and snatched a pistol off of one of his guards. He then forced the men to drop their weapons, and he hurled their weapons deep into the field. He then hopped on one of their horses, and before he galloped off into the wild blue yonder, he told the posse, "Tell Frank West he's going to pay for killing Belle's horse." News of the skirmish and wounding of her husband reached Belle. But since she was awaiting trial in Fort Smith, there was nothing she could do about it until the trial was over.
Hold on, wait. Mm-hmm. Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you. I'm trying to understand something real quick because I want to make sure I get this fool shot.
Yeah, he got shot.
In the
back.
Shot
twice.
Got shot
twice.
But somehow survived.
Did you say one of them was to the back of the head, or he was just bleeding?
One of them hit him in the back of the head, and one of them hit him in the side.
And this fool gets up, takes a gun from his guard, makes them drop their pistols, and grabs a horse and takes off. Go, God dang.
Yep.
All right.
I mean, and like these guys were just as dumbfounded because when Frank West gets back, he's like, "What the? How?"
I just wanted to make sure I was hearing that correctly because I'm
right.
like, all of a sudden, next thing I know, Sam's like riding off into the distance.
Oh yeah, Sam rode off to go nurse his wounds. He got up and he got away somehow.
All right.
So now the news of the skirmish and the wounding of her husband reached Belle, but since she was awaiting trial in Fort Smith, there was nothing she could do about it until the trial was over. Now finally her trial came and she was exonerated, much to her relief. As soon as it was over, she rushed back to Younger's Bend and to Sam's brother's house where he had been nursing his wounds. When she arrived at Sam's brother's house, he was in bad shape. He had lost a considerable amount of blood and was hovering on death's door. But once she took over nursing for him, he began to show signs of improvement and before long was on the mend. And Belle, not wanting to see her husband dead or injured further, suggested that he turn himself in Fort Smith so he could clear up all of his charges. Sam agreed, and as soon as he was well, the Starrs contacted Deputy Tyner Hughes to take Sam in. He came and got Sam and took him to Fort Smith with Belle right behind him, and as soon as she could, she paid his $1,000 bail and got him out of jail.
What would that be in today's money?
Oh, I have no idea. I mean, this is 1886 money.
Okay. $1886,000. Oh, that's
that's a hefty sum.
That's a big
$1,000 in 1886.
Yeah.
$34,000.
That's a lot
of
money. So, I mean, but she must have loved him because she paid it, and convinced him to go and turn himself into the federal marshals and not let the state police arrest him. Now, so Sam was now under federal protection, and those local law wannabes with 10 stars couldn't touch him anymore. With that solace and promise in hand, Belle and Sam went to leave Fort Smith. But on their way out of town, they found that Sam's father, Tom, had been arrested for selling liquor in Indian Territory. Tom was sentenced to 1.5 years in jail and hauled off to serve time in Illinois. The whole situation upset Sam, but what made matters worse was it was the West brothers who arrested Tom and brought him in. So, I know, man. They do not quit.
Were there not any other bad guys in the West brothers territory?
I don't know. I mean, I think once they couldn't get them, they just kind of made it their personal mission.
I was going to say, it's just
a
vendetta at this point. That's all it is. Yeah.
Now, Sam cursed the 2 sorry sons of bitches that continued to hound him and his family. Why couldn't the West brothers just leave him well enough alone? Sam was absolutely beside himself. But Belle calmed him down, and the 2 set off for home to enjoy the holidays with their family. But Sam's mood didn't really improve. He just sat around and stewed in his anger. Belle saw her husband sulking and stewing and felt bad for him. So she tried to make it better by taking him to a big Christmas party out there in the territory that everybody would attend. Although she was trying to cheer Sam up, the decision would prove to be a fatal one. Because shortly after the Starrs arrived at the party, Frank West did too, and an angry Sam went out to meet him. Sam stormed towards Frank and yelled at him. First for shooting him and constantly messing with his family, and lastly for arresting his father for a victimless crime. Frank didn't take it lying down and yelled back at Sam, which caused Sam to lose his temper and pull his revolver, cock the hammer, and shoot Frank fatally, wounding him.
Oh, God.
But before Frank fell to the ground, he pulled his gun and shot Sam, killing him right where he stood. Belle was unaware of the whole confrontation because she was busy playing piano for the partygoers. But once someone burst in and told her, her first reaction was, then why don't you bring them in and lay them out? So the men brought the 2 bodies in, and Belle saw her husband laid out on the floor. It was like lightning passed through her entire body. Inside, she was absolutely devastated, but she dare not let anyone see her cry. She just held her husband's head and damned the corpse of Frank West. As far as she was concerned, he was right where he belonged, and she hoped he was burning in hell. Belle spent Christmas mourning Sam's death. It seemed like she couldn't have anything good for herself. Every time she did, it was ripped from her, because people just couldn't seem to leave her alone. But she didn't have time to mope because she had a new problem. Because Sam was dead and Belle wasn't Cherokee, she lost her citizenship to the Cherokee Nation. and the law was going to make her move out of Younger's Bend and take her property. But Belle was always quick on her feet, and she found a solution rather quickly. She would be damned if anyone was going to take her property. So she quickly married Sam's adopted brother, 15 years her junior, named Jim July Starr. He was 24 years old and closer to her children's age than her own. Her son Eddie did not like the marriage at all, and neither did Pearl. But they knew she married Jim to save her home, so they just grit their teeth and went along with it. For the next year, the Starr family had a lot of drama. But this time, the drama was from within and not from the outside. Pearl and Eddie squabbled with Jim and their mother over petty things and had several violent interactions. One so bad that Belle lost her temper and she beat Eddie with a horsewhip until blood poured from his back.
Oof.
Oh no,
Yeah.
no, not good.
Yeah, she beat the snot out of Eddie.
Oof.
Eddie was so angry about the beating that he swore he would kill his mother and went across the river to live with another family. Pearl stayed but planned to leave in the middle of February 1889, right after her mother's 41st birthday and her brother's 18th birthday. She was tired of the circus and had to get out. But familial problems would become the least of the Starr clan's worries, because a knock would come at the door again that would change their lives forever. Belle opened the door to find a 6-foot-tall, red-headed stranger standing on her porch. He introduced himself as Edgar Watson and told Belle he was a farmer. He said that he and his wife were from Arkansas and heard Belle had a good bit of acreage for rent. He had hoped that he and his wife were able to farm the land and pay Belle rent for a fair price.
It's always a man.
Mm-hmm. Now, Belle was interested, but rather suspicious of Edgar. So she invited he and his wife inside to kind of feel him out. She struck up a conversation with Mrs. Watson and found out that she was absolutely delightful. And Belle was convinced that they were on the up and up and agreed to let them stay on the land. She developed a friendship with Mrs. Watson, and as the two got closer, Mrs. Watson offered up more info about she and her husband. It turned out that Edgar was wanted for murder in Florida.
Oh, Jesus.
Mhm.
I saw that one coming. I'm like, who are they
Yeah.
running from?
Well, that's fine. I was waiting for it to come, because again, in her life, it always seems to be like a man seems to be her
A ne'er-do-well
show up.
man.
a harbinger of doom for her.
Mm-hmm. And they always knock on the door. It seems
Stop
like.
That's why you don't open the door whenever people
Yeah.
knock. You like,
I know,
you can call
have like the
first.
Jehovah's Witnesses show up.
That's
What I
right.
do.
That's what I do too. I hit the
That's why
ground.
I have a rule. You ain't text me that you're coming or called me or we haven't spoken on the phone. I ain't answering the door. I will sit here on my couch in full view of the door where you can see me and the blinds are open and wave at you from inside while you ring my doorbell. Try me. There's about 4 people in this world who can just walk up into my house without having to call or text. Try me. Go ahead, Ryan.
Now, so it turned out he was wanted for murder in Florida.
Oh, Jesus.
And they were hiding out in Indian territory. Now, when Belle heard this, her heart sank. Everything had been nice and quiet, and she could not have another band of outlaws staying on her property. She had to come up with a way to get them out of there. So Belle came up with a plan. She would rent the land to another sharecropper named Joseph Tate and give the Watsons their money back. Then she would tell them that she couldn't rent to them because she had already promised the land to Tate. That way it would look like there was no harm, no foul, and everyone would come away with something. So she did just that and informed the Watsons that they would have to go. The Watsons did as they were asked, but Edgar was bitter about the whole situation and sought out Tate. He told Tate that he could rent from Belle if he wanted to, but her land was crawling with outlaws and they would rob him blind. So naturally, Tate backed out of the deal, leaving Belle confused. Belle quickly found out why and confronted Edgar Watson. She cursed him up and down for interfering in her business affairs and threatened to tell the authorities his little secret. Edgar got angrier and angrier and became flustered. But instead of saying anything, he just turned around and stormed off. Pearl had been listening to the conversation and feared for her mother's safety. She warned her that she shouldn't get involved with people like the Watsons. She told Belle that it would come back to bite her, and it may have. On February the 2nd, 1889, Jim July had to go to Fort Smith to answer for an old horse thievery charge. Again, she has a type. Belle decided to ride with him part of the way and ride over to a friend's house that evening for a visit. The couple spent the night with friends, and in the morning, Jim continued on. Belle turned back and went to the store on King Creek to pay a bill that she owed. She was friends with the shopkeepers, so when they saw her, they invited her to stay for lunch. But as she visited, the shopkeepers realized she wasn't acting herself. The normally lively Belle seemed depressed and listless. So the couple asked her what was wrong. Belle just sighed and said that things had been rough for her lately, and she felt like one of her enemies aimed to kill her. The merchant smiled at her and in an effort to cheer her up said, "Oh, hell, Belle, thunder and lightning couldn't kill you." But Belle just grimaced and continued on with lunch. She got up and thanked the shopkeepers and went on her way. On the way home, Belle stopped by the home of Jackson Rowe. She had hoped to see her son Eddie, who was now living there, and smooth things over with him. But Eddie had already left for a friend's house. Belle didn't realize it, but Edgar Watson had also moved nearby. And he was also visiting the Rowe homestead that day.
Oh, Jesus.
But as he saw Belle ride up, he took his leave and slunk away. Belle stayed around for the afternoon and visited with friends, but as dusk was beginning to approach, she found it better to head towards home and hit the muddy trail. So she saddled up and started for Younger's Bend. But as she approached the road where she was supposed to turn on, she didn't realize it, but it was within 300 yards of Edgar Watson's cabin. She passed the corner of the fence that ran by the lane, but didn't see an assassin crouched behind the fence waiting for the right moment to strike. As she turned the corner, a shotgun blast rang out, shattering the tranquility of the countryside and sending buckshot into her that ripped through Belle's back and neck, knocking her out of the saddle and into the mud. She tried to get up, but the assassin jumped the fence and walked over to her and opened up on her with the second barrel, blowing off the side of her face and sending turkey shot into her shoulder. The killer immediately fled and left the fearsome Belle Starr to die in the mud. The tough, hard-scrabble frontierswoman was now dead, and to this day, no one knows who killed her. However, there were footprints in the mud that matched Edgar Watson, and Edgar and his wife even attended her funeral. But no one was ever held accountable for the death of Belle Starr. Long after her death, the legend that is Belle Starr continues on, thanks to fictional portrayals of her exploits in dime novels and numerous films. Although the real Belle Starr is nowhere near as wild as her fictional counterpart, she was a woman who was tough as nails that lived life her way. She bent the knee to no one and did as she pleased. Ironically, it was the men in her life that were scoundrels and always drug her into their feuds and quarrels. But she stuck by them and fought alongside them even to her detriment. Belle became a legend because of it, and even to this day, people know the name Belle Starr. So that's it for Belle Starr.
I find it, one thing that I kind of thought of as you were telling the story, I find it interesting that the story of the feud between the Stars and the Wests and how much it mirrors the story of the Hatfields and the McCoys.
Yeah.
And she is a direct relation to the Hatfields and McCoys. So it's very interesting to me. She is obviously a product of her time.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously. I mean, her family, she's a direct descendant of the Hatfield McCoys and directly related. That's going to follow them, that kind of mentality, family upbringing. That's going to get passed generation to generation. Also, it's the mid to late 1800s when all this taking place during the Civil War. I think she was a woman who, I mean, honestly, like, I think she had to develop a temper.
Of course.
And she had to develop a hardness because of the men that she was attracted to. Let's face it, she had a type. I mean, every man that you just described was a gambler, a horse thief, like just always running around and, not wanting to stay home. I don't know. I gained a little bit of respect for her and with her determination and motivation for the things that she wanted in life.
Right. I mean, and two, like you said, she was a product of her time because these, and not saying that it was right for what these men did to her, but these men were also guys that were dealing with trauma left over from the Civil War, and they were used to being, riding the range and riding around and going from hither and yon and doing what they needed to do. And so when it came time to settle down and start a family, these guys were never going to be what she needed them to be for her. And I do feel bad for her because I think that she ultimately, throughout her story, as you read her story, she wanted to be good. She wanted to do good. But she just couldn't seem to catch that break where people would leave her alone. And she always seemed to be drug into something no matter what, no matter how good she was. So I do feel bad for Belle Starr.
Well,
I mean,
I'm
go ahead.
Go
Go
ahead.
ahead. Oh, I was going to say, I'm going to tag on to what you said, Blake. I have a lot of respect for her in the sense that I agree. I think she had to adapt.
Mhm.
And she had to make sure that she developed the kind of personality to make sure she was heard and that she wasn't just dismissed. Okay, little lady, go sit down. I
Mhm.
got a gun. Guess what? You're going to stop and pay attention
Right.
because I need you to understand what I'm telling you. I think that she had to adapt to her situation, circumstances, and I don't think her adaptation is anything different than what the men were doing. I think she was doing exactly what the men were doing, that she was doing her best to be as much of a man as any man in the Old West was. And that
Mhm.
was a way for her to be seen, heard, and respected. And I do agree. I think she probably did want to settle down, did want to have a quiet life, probably wanted to have what, Miss Watson had, where even though her husband murdered somebody,
Mhm.
okay, but she was leading the at home life, being the proper, pioneer princess, for lack of a better word. I don't
Mhm.
know. But yeah, I think that she had to develop and be as much of a man as any man was in the Old West, whether it was
Right.
through pistols or fights or cussing them or drinking.
Mhm.
She had to be figure out a way to be heard. And I think she
Well,
did that.
and I think that's why she's also so notorious in I guess outlaw history, if you will. I mean,
Mhm.
because it's I mean, what is that? 40 years later, we see the same thing with Bonnie and Clyde.
Right.
Granted, I don't think she really had to adapt per se to any situation. I just think
Mhm.
that one was more definitely a product of her time. But Annie Oakley, yeah, I mean, all of these
Mhm.
women who are just Ma Barkley,
Calamity Jane. Yeah.
who are just wrapped up in a man's world, and because they are so determined to
Mhm.
Survive.
have the and have the self-respect of that men are given, now they're notorious in this outlaw world because
Right.
they wield a gun.
Now, something I didn't really go into in the story, and something that, because I had to cut it for time, cut it down a little
Yeah.
bit, but like there was always a newspaper that was reporting on her and making up these damn stories about her and about the company she was keeping. Because I mean, like there was, when she went to go to Fort Smith, there was a guy who was a newspaper man that interviewed her, and he was like, I want to set the story straight on you. And so she grants him an interview, and she sits down with him and like tells him her story, like her real story. And then she comes back and he embellishes this big, like, crappy article about her, and she's like pissed off. And but what can she do at this point? But she's like, hey, what the hell? I told you my story. Like, why are you trying to make me look even worse? And
Yeah.
I feel like she kind of ran into that a lot. It's just, she did not conform to what society wanted her to be. So they created a villain, and they talked about her, even though she what had the best of intentions, I feel
Well,
like.
she was an easy target. She was a
Mm-hmm.
female who wasn't behaving
Mm-hmm.
as she should. She
Yeah.
wasn't, going, bring me some tea, honey. I'll knock that tea out of your hand.
Mm-hmm.
She wasn't going to be the doting, cowering female. Oh my goodness, there's a bad man in the house. She's going to pull the pistol and be like, you need to
Right.
get out of my
Well,
house.
and that's why
Mm-hmm.
they have to develop these crazy fucking stories. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Mm-hmm.
Again, back with Bonnie and Clyde, for the longest time, they thought that she was, just being drug along
Right.
and having to do this stuff when in turn she was being just as responsible as
Right.
the rest of the
Mm-hmm.
Barrow gang.
Right.
Yeah, so of course they have to sensationalize her story because
And
nobody
Mm-hmm.
could believe that a woman can do this.
Right.
A
and
woman
here's the
is
thing.
just as capable of as a man is in anything that they want to do,
Mm-hmm.
good
And
or bad.
and the other thing is that she was alone a lot. So she had to make sure she was able to defend herself, her children,
Mm-hmm.
to make her own living. And you got to be tough to do that. You got to be
Right.
tough nowadays to do it. Can you
Absolutely.
imagine way back when you couldn't own property, when you couldn't, uh, come on. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I have a lot of respect. I don't like what she did to her son. That's too far.
Right.
That's not cool.
And
She
what
Uh,
had. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think we run into that quite a few times on this podcast. So we talk about these individuals, obviously, because they're notorious for a reason, and we like to cover true crime, outlaw stuff like that. We cannot agree with the actions she took in her life on some of the things, or even some of the things that she sympathized with. But you can see a certain level of respect that it would, or you can have a certain level of respect to see the determination and self-preservation that she had to adapt to in order to just get through life as a woman in the mid to late 1800s.
Right.
Yeah, just exist.
Right.
I don't condone it, but I understand.
Right.
I can see why that was the personality that had to be developed in order to survive.
I didn't go into this really in the story either, but that's why she pushed Pearl into the theater so hard after Jim Reed died, because she was like, you need to be self-reliant. You don't need a man to take care of you. You have to make your way on your own. So she was pushing Pearl hard in the theater, which eventually caused Pearl to stress out and pass out, so she couldn't do it anymore. But that was something that she kind of tried to drill into Pearl, that you need to be self-sufficient, which Pearl actually ended up being, because Pearl ended up opening up a brothel in Van Buren, Arkansas, and operated it for years, and she was a successful businesswoman in downtown Van Buren. But yeah, a story I wanted to tell you guys really quick too, that I had to cut for time, was one time a posse came to Younger's Bend to arrest her husband again, and she was waiting on him, and she saw him pull up, and she said, hey, he's not here. By the way, you guys look like you're a little hungry. Would you like some breakfast? And the guys were like, oh, yeah, that'd be fantastic. So she made this posse coffee and like made a stew and everything, and fed them this stew, and they ate the stew and they loved it so much. And so one of the guys finally said, well, Miss Starr, what is this stew? And she pulled up a damn rattlesnake that she had skinned, and she's like, oh, this rattlesnake, I mean, I killed him this morning. And all these men start freaking out, and she looks at Wallum and says, now go in the yard and puke it up. So they went out in the yard, and they
ain't ever ate like a rattlesnake or a snake. I mean,
I was going to say, I would think that rattlesnake would be something you would eat if you were desperate enough, and you could
I think so too. I think so too, but I think that it was just kind of like one of those things.
I think it was a story that just made her sound even more vengeful, and and would make her seem as if she was worthy of spite.
And I mean, because she just did not conform to what they wanted and what they thought a female should be at the time. And like you said, you do have to respect her, because she did make her own way and she cut her own path, and there's a reason that we're still talking about her today.
Amen. That was going to be my final thoughts on it, was that I 100% respect the tenacity, the self-preservation, determination, and motivations that she had in life. I don't condone or agree with all her actions or her sympathies that she had, but I can respect a woman trying to survive. Absolutely, 100%.
Absolutely.
I agree. And with that, Blake, why don't you tell them everything they need to know?
Sounds good. Well, if you want to support the show directly, you can head on over and check out our Patreon page. That is going to be linked in our link tree link tomorrow morning, Wednesday morning, on our Facebook and our X profiles. For just $5 a month, you will unlock over 450 exclusive videos, Patreon exclusive videos, which include the pre and the post broadcast, which are the 30 minutes before and the 30 minutes after this live broadcast. It also includes never before seen footage, including very infamous dirty Estes methods and all of that lovely stuff. I divulged a lot of my love life tonight on pre-broadcast, so wait for tomorrow mornings to drop. Yay! Plus, your support helps us keep bringing you these ghostly adventures and true crime and outlaw adventures as well, week after week. So if you're not sure about joining Patreon, try it risk-free with our 7-day free trial. That's patreon.com/EVP podcast, 2 P's in that. So make sure you stay connected with us. Follow us on Facebook, YouTube, and many more by searching Everything Vaguely Paranormal and looking for that green sound wave, or by clicking the icons in our Linktree link. Remember, you can catch us live, you audio listeners, every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time on Facebook and YouTube. If you want to meet us in person, you have got several choices this year. We are going to be all over in the country, starting first May 30th through June the 1st. We will be in the DFW area for Fan Expo at the K. Bailey Hutchinson Convention Center, along with Mr. Chad Wandell from Ghost Geeks. Then we are up to Chicagoland at the Countryside Banquet Conference Center. Why are these names so long? In LaGrange, Illinois on June 7th. That's June 7th, LaGrange, Illinois. Then we are headed to the Paranormal Rockdown at Broadhead Manor in Broadhead, Wisconsin on July 18th through the 19th. You can also catch us at the Gettysburg Battlefield Bash from July 25th through the 27th in Gettysburg. Then we are off to Kansas City Paracon, or KC Paracon, on August 2nd. And you'll never guess it, Kansas City. Then we head to Vernal, Utah for Phenomicon 2025, September the 3rd through the 6th. And finally, we will be attending the Rock Island Roadhouse Esoteric Expo on October the 4th in Rock Island, Illinois. It'll be our second time back. We are excited for that one. Lots of our friends up there.
Oh, yeah.
So can't wait to join that. Make sure you go subscribe to our Eventbrite page to be notified when public investigation tickets go on sale. We do have some that are on sale, and they are selling out. It is for the Gregg County Historical Museum, where we have exclusive rights. So if you ever wanted to go with us, we are your only ticket in. So that's going to be June 14th for my birthday celebration. So y'all go check it out and purchase your tickets for that. We are very grateful for your continued support. Every like, comment, share, and download keeps these adventures alive. So if you have a favorite episode, share it with friends. Make sure you tag us. And if you have a story, comment, or a question, or you would like to have us as guests on your show, that can be emailed to us at the evppod@gmail.com. That is THEEVPPOD@gmail.com.
Go like, share, and subscribe to that YouTube channel.
So thank you for tuning in to another weekly edition of Everything Vaguely Paranormal. My name is Ryan Roberts, and these are my partners in the paranormal, Mr. Blake Smith and Miss Shelley Pruitt. And we will see y'all next Tuesday.
Bye-bye.
Bye, y'all.